Morning, YouTube. This is Greg Shields, Greg Shields Outdoors. This is going to be episode 3 of The Blue Side of Prison. It's a series about how to survive as an officer in the prison system. I survived 30 years in both the federal and the state systems. And in the Georgia state system, they have 2 special teams in the prison system. They have the CERT team, which is the Critical Emergency Response Team, and they have the Tactical Squad. I served on both. When you're a correctional officer or a correctional corporal or CO2, what they call it in Georgia, you can volunteer to be on these teams, and they pay extra money, but you'll earn every dime of it. But when you make sergeant, I made sergeant, and they move you around to different positions each year. And I served as the supervisor of the CERT team, and some of the things I saw on that, what you are in that team is you investigate the crimes of the prison. Just because these guys have gone to prison, their criminal ways, a lot of them are not over. Matter of fact, they escalate. And you have rapes, murders, thefts, strong arm robbery, evidence tampering, everything you can think of, you have there at an elevated scale, huge scale in there. And some of the things I saw, like we had one boy, it's one of the worst things I saw. It was a young boy, and his first time in prison, and he was in a dorm, and he got jumped on by, I think it was 5 or 6 guys, and they raped him, and he was messed up for life. And when we got to him, when the dorm officer found him in the cell, he was just beaten half to death and raped, and it was horrible. And then you've got an investigation. You know, it's not like on the street where you can go talk to witnesses. Nobody in there is going to say a word. And if they do say something, if somebody tells on somebody, then their life's in danger. So it's a rough situation. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think that one ever got solved. And that young boy, I think he was only serving like 3 years, but his life will never be the same. But what I wanted to talk about was, how do you survive going from being on one of those elite teams when you're the team that has to take people down, you have to break up the fights, you have to do cell extractions, where you might have to use a shock shield on somebody and restrain them, and you have to be you're the brawling wing of the prison, and you have to have that in there, because a lot of the guys that's in there are violent people, and they don't stop being violent just because they're in prison. So you've got to have teams in place that can stop that violence from escalating. So how do you survive? Like I was on the TAC squad, and you have to go into the SHU, which is the special housing unit. You have to go in there and take an inmate down that won't cuff up to either get moved or be seen by medical, because once they get into the SHU, you can no longer open their door if they're not handcuffed and restrained. It's just too dangerous, you can't do it, so they have to be handcuffed. If they won't do that, then you do what's called a cell extraction, and you go in there and you handcuff them and you do what you have to do responsibility wise, and then you can unhook them. But I was going to tell you how you survive if you're on the team that does that to somebody, and say he serves his time and he's back out into a dorm. All right, and well, there you are, you're as a dorm officer, you're not doing the TAC squad job right then, so you have to go back to the regular shifts until there's another time that they're calling you out. Well, he remembers what you had to do, but I'm going to tell you something. You don't get retribution from stuff like that, because, and I'll tell you why. You don't get retribution when you have to use force on an inmate, usually because you give him 10, 15 opportunities to cuff up. You ask him, you plead with him, come to the door and cuff up so we can do this, or we have to move this cell to do some plumbing in there. And if they don't do it, then they get what they get, and they understand that. It's just part of manning up that they have to do. And the bottom line is, once they stand their ground on something, they're never relenting. They're not backing off of it, because that makes them look bad, and that's just the way it is. And anyway, that's how you survive on that. You do your job, and you don't get extra licks in if you have to use force. You just do your job, and it's over. You use the absolute least amount of force you have to use, and that's how you survive those situations. I'm gonna tell you something about officers getting hurt in the prison system. Now, I saw many officers, over my career, get their teeth knocked out, their eye sockets busted, their nose broke. I saw one get thrown off the second floor of the 2-tier cell block. broke his leg when he hit, and inmates threw him over the top rail. But I'm gonna tell you something. Almost, I'm gonna say 100% of the time that happened, that those officers got attacked. Let me tell you something. When an inmate comes to prison, you have to get it through your head as an officer that you are not you're not the punishment. You personally, as an officer in that prison, you're not the punishment. He was not sentenced to be under your reign of terror the whole time he's in there. The punishment is he's sent to prison. His punishment is being there. Now, he has to follow the rules just like you have to follow the rules. But the officers that got hurt in the prison system when I was involved in it were just stupid. I mean, they terrorized the inmates. They let the badge and the uniform go to their head. They mistreated them. They harassed them. They took their property when they weren't authorized to. They turned the phones off when they were on the phones and just harassed them. And if you do that, if you can't get it through your head that badge is not a force field around you that you can't be hurt, then you're going to get your ass tore up. And bottom line is you probably deserved it. But once an officer gets hurt, we have to go in there as the team and get the inmate locked up, take him to trial, and so forth and so on. But the officers that got hurt, bottom line is they went out and they asked to get hurt in most cases. That's the cases that I saw. And I'm gonna kind of make this a short episode, but I'm gonna tell you one funny story about letting the wrong inmate out. One of my jobs as a correctional sergeant in the Georgia system was to run intake, which included releasing prisoners. And the paperwork comes in from the ID room about who to release. Well, it just so happened that one of the inmates to be released had the exact same name. I'm talking about exact same name and hometown as another inmate in another part of the prison. Well, when the intake office sent me the paperwork to release the inmate, they put the wrong Georgia State Prison number on the paperwork. All right? And me being one to follow the rules, I was by God going to let out the one they said to let out. So anyway, I called him up to intake to get his release done and get him taken to the bus station. And they give inmates a set of release clothes and a check for, I think it was $25 back then. Anyway, he comes up there to intake, and he comes in the door. I said, "You're being released today." He didn't know a single thing about it. He said, "Sergeant Shields, I've got 20 years." He said, "Ain't no way I'm getting released today." And I pulled up the paperwork. I said, "Your name so and so?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Are you from Brunswick, Georgia?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Is your EF number so and so?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "You're out. You're getting released. I have a release order for you, and you're getting out of this prison today." He was ecstatic. He was just elated, beyond happy. And the funny thing was, I had such a reputation in the prison for being truthful with the inmates and telling them exactly how it was. I convinced him he was getting out. That's how much power telling the truth in there has. He thought for sure there's no way Sergeant Shields was making a mistake. He's straight up with us. So anyway, I gave him his uniform to put on to let him out. He puts on the clothes and they don't fit. I mean, the pants won't button. They're 3 inches too high. So what do? I call over to the warehouse and get him new release clothes that do fit. So that didn't even make me change from what I was supposed to do. If that release order said he's going, his ass is going. So anyway, we get him released, processed out, give him his check, the whole shooting match. We take him to the bus station, drop him off. All right, we're halfway back to the prison. Me and two officers have to drop him off. I had me as a sergeant, and then I had a CO2, which is a corporal, with me. So we go drop him off at the bus station. We get about halfway back and the radio blows up. The inmate that was supposed to get out was in the minimum security wing, and he came up to the control room and said, I wanted to know how come I hadn't got called to intake for my release. I'm supposed to be released today. My family waiting on me. And you talk about shit hitting the fan. Well, it hit it. They called us on the radio and want to know where that inmate was. I said, we dropped him off at the bus station. Well, it turned out he still had 18 years to go on a 20-year sentence for armed robbery, and we just let him loose in the middle of downtown Waycross. Anyway, we put the blue lights on, hauled ass back to the bus station, and And I had convinced him so hard that he was getting out. He'd already gone across the street to the bank, cashed the check, went and got some breakfast, and was sitting in the bus station waiting on the bus to get there. And it was terrible to have to. It was terrible to have to put him back in the van. And he said, Sarge, I tried to tell you. I said, I know, but I let out who they said let go, so I did that. Anyway, I figured that was going to cost me my job, because that was a monumental mistake. I mean, that could have been a murderer I just turned loose. So we got back, and sure enough, I got called to the warden's office, and I went in there, and he was truthful with me. He said, Sarge, he said, we're going to have to turn this into Atlanta to the headquarters. He said, I don't know if I can save your job. And I said, I understand that. I said, if I have to go, I have to go. And this was like maybe year 5 or 6 in the department, and I ended up retiring with 30. But anyway, I said, if I have to get fired, I get fired. I'll get another job. I was ex-Navy and was a pretty good worker, and I knew I'd be fine, but I didn't want to lose my job. But what saved me, this is the only thing that saved my job, is that the intake office sent the wrong number on all the paperwork. So they basically ordered me, this was a legal release order, they ordered me to let out who I let out. So anyway, if they were going to terminate me, they had to terminate the entire intake ID room. So it was going to be a mess. But anyway, they kind of just wrote it off as a mistake and no harm done. And that's what comes from having a decent, good reputation in there as a correctional officer or a sergeant, is sometimes you can survive a situation like that, because the fact of the matter is I probably should have been fired over something that egregious, but I made it through it. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that, and my next episode will be episode 4. I'm going to go over how to survive fights. How to survive, because fights are unbelievable. Fights are every day in a level 5 high security institution. There are fights in the dorms, fights at the chow hall, fights on the yard. I'm going to talk about how you survive fights as a correctional officer, and how do you prevent crimes from happening in a correctional setting. Anyway, y'all have a great day. God bless y'all, and please like and subscribe. Got some good content on the way, and y'all take it easy.